occupied at number 1. Last week it was the Dolphins on the PFT Power Rankings presented by our friends at Toyota. Now that the Dolphins have lost, because they were number 1 last week, the 49ers have lost 2 in a row. They're down to number 5. There are the 2 Super Bowl teams from last year. Just the same way it all started, Charean, 8 weeks ago. Chiefs 1, Eagles 2. But one team that was not at number 3 when we got this thing rolling, the Jacksonville Jaguars. The best team in Florida is in Duval County, at least as of right now, at least under these rankings. Do you have any issue, and I'm fine if you do, it makes it more interesting if you do, frankly, with me putting the Jaguars ahead of the Dolphins, 49ers, and the Ravens at number 3?
No, I don't think right now with the way they're playing and what's happened with the Dolphins, 49ers, and Ravens here recently. The Ravens have won, but especially the Dolphins and 49ers with their losses, I have no problem with that. I think the Jaguars are playing really well right now. So, no, I have no problem with that. I do think those other teams probably are better than the Jaguars, but, you know, we don't know that for certain, and they're playing really well right now. So, no, I think it's fine where they are.
And that's one of the things that actually I like about the power rankings, because it reminds me of the old football polls where you would see a team that had worked its way up to the top 5, and you know that that team right behind it would kick the crap out of it if they got together, but still let them enjoy what they've accomplished. They've won 4 in a row. They really should have blown out the Saints the other night. They took their foot all the way off the gas after the pick 6 that put them up 24-9, but they still pulled out the win, and they sit there at number 3. And they'll stay there as long as they keep winning. That's the key about being in the top portion of the power rankings. There's one way to stay. There's one way to justify your spot. You keep winning. Because if you lose, you're not going to stay where you were. You're not going to be the number 1 team, lose, and stay number 1 or 2 or 3. You've got to fall a little bit. One team that stayed exactly where they were was the Cowboys at number 7 because they didn't play. And my son asked me about this because the first half of the Monday night game is when I do the bulk of the power rankings, just, you know, taking last week's and turning it into this week's and moving teams around. And he said, what do you do with a team that was on a bye? It's like, well, I try my damnedest to keep them exactly where they were. They didn't play. They shouldn't fall. They definitely shouldn't rise, although sometimes they do. If the team's ahead of you lose, maybe you do bump up. But Cowboys at 7, buy or no buy. Is that a good spot for them? You know the Cowboys better than I do.
I would probably have them behind the Lions. I think the Lions are playing, it's hard to say that after what we saw Sunday, but I do think the Lions are the better team than the Cowboys right now. So I would probably have the Lions above the Cowboys, but after that loss, the Ravens, I can certainly justify moving the Lions below the Cowboys at this point because it is based on a lot of it on the previous week. It's based on the record, yes, but how are you playing right now? How did you play last weekend? Cowboys didn't play and Lions got blown out. So, yeah, I think the Lions are probably the better team, but I think where the Cowboys are is probably right where they should be right now coming off a bye week.
And because I had to move the Ravens ahead of the Cowboys after that 38-6 win over Detroit, the problem is if I would have kept the Lions ahead of the Cowboys, I would have had to drop the Cowboys. And it's like, wait a minute, we didn't do anything. And we definitely didn't lose 38-6. And we dropped a spot. So, yeah, I think that would have been a fair argument for Cowboys fans and one of the reasons why I left them where they were. You know, the Falcons made a big jump. And the reason they made a big jump, even though they barely won, and I'm not happy with the whole Bijan Robinson thing and how that was handled. But once they won, when you look at all the teams that were in front of them, they all lost. And then when you consider the Texans at 14, who didn't play this past weekend, and the Falcons beat them, I had to find a way to put the Falcons in front of the Texans. And it was just very easy. This team lost, this team lost, this team lost, and you just work your way up. So it wasn't that they had some huge blowout win. They just won a game at the bottom of a group of teams that all lost, Charean.
Or didn't play. Yeah, they deserve to be where they are. But when you look at this top 16, the Falcons surprised me some, but when you look at the top 16, who's the biggest surprise to you there right now? Is it the Texans?
I would say, Yes. Oh, absolutely. The Texans were the one team, if we would have done the draft of teams that have no chance to make it to the playoffs, it would have been a one-round, one-pick draft. The Texans. And maybe the Cardinals. Texans and Cardinals would have been the two teams.
Yeah.
So, yes, absolutely.
I don't know that the Texans are going to the postseason, but to sit there at 3-3 right now with having only 3 wins last season, to me, yes, they're. And I would say the Jets are somewhat of a surprise too, because I had totally written them off after they lost Aaron Rodgers, and then they come out and they stink it up against the Cowboys in week 2. So they're not a team that I expected to be in the top 16 at this point.
And good news, Patriots fans, your team is no longer number 32. After beating the Bills, the Patriots have shot from 32 to 28. I don't want to get too crazy. They still got to stack some wins together. Let's see what you do this weekend against the Dolphins. You beat the Dolphins, you'll make a nice little bump up toward the top of the second half. And there you see the Patriots at 28. The Panthers, the new. Now, they fell without playing, but hey, you're 0-6. Sorry, Panthers. You fell from 31 to 32. Beat the Texans this week, and you'll make a move out of the bottom spot. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.